What was the fascination with it? Because like you said, you had a warehouse job, you was doing a forklift, but what was the fascination around it that got you so intrigued with it? And then obviously it got you out of what you were doing. So what about credit like got your mind spinning?
I got you. So I think, like I said, so it's rooted. It just, I guess it would say I was rooted with with real estate. I like real estate, and I was okay. Well, you need OPM. I was like, what is this OPM? But Robert Kiyosaki breaks it down. It's just credit. So, or like one of my mentors, Will Roundtree, is just credit. It's just debt. So debt is credit. So when you hear these things like get debt, use debt, leverage debt, that's just credit. So when you hear it consistent, I think that's what it was. You really hearing a quote unquote the blueprint. Like they say, borrow, debt to use it to buy assets. So it was just conceptual, if that makes sense. It's like that's the way to go. That's the capitalist way. So when you're looking at it from that standpoint, I'm like, well, this is what the billionaires are doing. This is how the country has advanced. They leverage credit and use terms and creative financing to take it to the next level. And that's the reason that our country is in this level, So regardless of what you may feel about the country or like where you at and whatnot, is this system, everything is built on credit. You follow what I'm saying? You work on credit. Like if you work a 9 to 5, and there's nothing wrong with that. If you work a W-2, everybody's worked that. If you work a W-2, what do? You go there on terms and you work 2 weeks before you ever get paid. So that employer is getting credit. Credit is just getting goods or services before payment. You follow what I'm saying?
That's a good way to look at it.
That's all it is. So rappers the same way. They get in advance. That's credit. They might have cashed out on a Corvette, but they still owe the bank, or they still owe that's still credit in some form or fashion. Yeah. Just because it's been liquidated and turned into cash and they have it in their hands doesn't mean it's still not credit. You follow what I'm saying? So everything's credit, like everything. But going back to it, like the employee. So if you are working, you got to work 2 weeks before you ever get something. So you are, the credit in that sense. They get an employee for 2 weeks before they ever have to cut you a check.
Gotcha.
So I feel like it's literally you're in the credit system whether you want to be or not. It's almost like a matrix. You're in it and you're forced to be in it. So you can learn the rules. You can learn how to adapt in it. You can opt out. There's so many ways you can do it. I just chose to opt in.
Yeah, I got you. So the easy question or typical question I feel like would be, so many Americans got bad credit. Why do you think they have bad credit? Yeah. You know what I'm saying? But what I want to ask you is, there's a lot of people out here that have good credit.
Yeah, for sure.
But they don't know what to do with it. They don't know how to leverage it, right? Mm-hmm. They probably haven't even looked at it, or maybe they pride themselves on just having good credit. So someone's watching this right now or listening to the podcast, and they actually have good credit.
Yeah.
Like what are some things they could do with it, and why should they consider leveraging their credit?
Okay, that's a great question, because that's half of people. I mean, we got people who have, I think it's like 50% of people have bad credit. About 40% of people have quote unquote unfavorable credit, and there's the other half that have good credit. They don't know how to leverage it. It's because you haven't been taught the power of it. No one's been taught that. I was in that same position. So I had good credit, but I didn't learn until like 25 until how to actually stretch it. So I only had one credit card until I met a mentor who was like, why you have one when you could have 20? I never had my mind stretched to that. Like, well, no one asked me that question. So people have good credit, or they have one credit card, but they think that credit cards equal debt. You follow what I'm saying? So they fray away from getting credit cards. You follow what I'm saying? And that's the only things they hear about. They only hear about credit cards, auto loans, and mortgages. So that's all we're taught. We're not taught the lending institution how to go get a commercial loan. There's people who have the limited belief that you can't go get a loan to build a product. There's people who are using credit. They're getting paper. They're getting architects to create some paper, say we're going to build this project, and they're going to get credit, not using any of their own money. So I think it's like you have to understand how to leverage it. You follow what I'm saying? So if no one's ever told you or posed the question, like you sure you're doing everything you can with that? You got a 750 credit. Like you were thinking about an investment. Sometimes they have fundamentally wrong mindset about it. So you want to save money. You got good credit and you want to save the money. You follow what I'm saying? You're working hourly to save money. So if you're trying to save $10,000 and you're doing it at 20 hours a pop, you're gonna have to work 500 hours when you could just literally leverage your credit today and get into that thing. So let's just say it takes you, now we're talking about 500 hours. Most people work 2,000 hours a week. So 2,000 hours a year annually, you know what I'm saying? So an extra 500 hours, that's a whole quarter. It's a whole quarter. So you got to put that up. You got to work overtime just to save that up when you could just leverage your credit and get into it. But people haven't been taught to that. They think credit is debt. They don't understand how servicing it works and whatnot. I think that's a big thing. It's a knowledge barrier. You follow what I'm saying? You got to get bit by the bug in a way, or someone has to introduce you to how to leverage it. So if you got good credit, there's many different ways you can leverage. You got a credit card, you can start making income from it. It depends on what you want to do. So I feel like it's about finding out what your risk is, what your risk tolerance, because credit is debt and you will have to pay it back. So like a lot of times people get on there and they start talking about credit, but not talking about payment plans or restructuring. So that's one thing I specialize in, showing people the nuance on it, because I don't understand just credit, I understand debt, because it's all money, it's all debt. So I think that's the big part of it. You got to understand how to leverage it. So most people can leverage it by getting extra credit cards. To the first thing is, if you got 24, let's say 24% interest credit cards, you got debt piled up. Leveraging your credit just on a excuse me, just on a strategic note of you getting credit cards that have lower interest. So that might help someone who's they debt averse, but they're trying to get out of debt faster. So it all depends on your strategy. Or someone might be like, hey, I want to use credit. I got 50,000 in debt, but I heard this thing of using credit. Let me go get a 10K credit card. Let me go get more debt, because I believe if I create an income source, I create a business that can generate an extra $2,000 to $5,000 a month, that can help me pay my debt down faster. You follow what I'm saying? So it really depends on your investor DNA.